What's up, folks? This is Tony Brewer. You're listening to or watching, as the case may be, Cogitations. Cogitations is the podcast where we think about things, we contemplate them, we turn them over in our minds. Ooh, it was loud. Then we discuss them. Daniel chapter 7, verse 28, Daniel writes, "Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me. My countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart. We're not going to keep the matter in our heart. We're going to talk about it. Today, we're going to talk about building your house on the rock." Good morning, Diana Harden. Good to see you. Good morning, Ted Hook Knight. Man, I had to sit quietly on something. Aaron Dotson is going to be leaving Northeast Arkansas. I knew it. I knew it yesterday, and he was at jury duty yesterday, but anyway, this has been some time coming, and I'm so thankful for everyone. I'm so thankful for Aaron, and I know that he's going to do a good job down there in Alabama. He's been needing to get back home for a while, quite frankly. But he was such a good evangelist for the Washington Avenue Church of Christ, and I know they'll miss him. So anyway, that's what I've got here. Let's get into y'all. I'm gonna start this podcast with a story. I may make a video about it a little bit more after I collect my thoughts on it. There's a fable. This don't have anything to do with the podcast meat, like the quote unquote lesson I planned for today. I'm just sharing this from my life. I made a woman cry yesterday. I didn't mean to, and I wasn't being mean. We were just talking about emotional things. And she broke down. And when she does that little hitch and then the dam breaks, like you've seen that before, right? Whenever people are trying to hold back. Interestingly enough, I saw a video from a hostage negotiator, and he talked about people who were acting. He said, "No, that's not it. I'm getting that confused. Maybe I saw a video from somebody somewhere, unless I'm making this up." Okay, so just take that as it is. Where he talked about actors, or the actor was talking about actors, or whatever, and said the interesting thing that actors get wrong sometimes about showing emotion is, whenever you laugh, you never try to laugh. Most of the time in a situation when you're trying to laugh, you're trying not to. With crying, most of the time when you cry, you never see anybody cry, really. Like I'm not saying there's not an exception to the rule, but I'm saying, generally speaking, you don't see people cry that are trying to cry. You see them cry, and everyone you see cry is trying not to. They are trying to hold back the tears. Now, that's the way this woman was yesterday when I was talking to her. And we were talking about life and being part of a tribe, being part of a community, and being there for one another. Hello, everybody, by the way. Mike Osnes, Diana Harden. Good to see you. Well, I said hello to Diana Harden. What I mean is, I will give Aaron the best, him and his family, from you. And, thank you so much. And, of course, he'll probably scan this or look at the comments or something, and he'll see it. But anyway, and Mike Osnes, good to see you. So, I can't remember, I should have just let the comments stand to the end, because now I can't remember where I am in my story. Oh, yeah, that's the way this woman was. She was sitting on a powder keg of emotion. And as we were talking, and I'm trying to explain to her, like I'm trying to comfort her by saying, "You're powerful. You can do this. I know it feels hard. I know it feels like you're not the mother you think you should be, or maybe not that, but maybe you feel like you're deficient in certain key areas in child rearing. Okay? Welcome to the club of humanity. Everybody thinks that. Very few people actually are. Okay? But I was trying to give her these affirmations, these positive affirmations, these encouragements, and I assumed that she had a friend group. a tribe, at least blood relatives. You know, if you got blood relatives living close to you, even if you don't like them and they don't like you, they're typically your people. Like, you still can depend on them. All right? I would think. I mean, that's the way I am. I mean, I got folks that aren't even blood related to me that I don't even particularly like, that if they called me up and they needed help, I'd be Johnny on the spot because they're my people. You know, I'm gonna put Barry Odell. I'm gonna throw him under the bus. Have you seen what he thinks of cats? There's something wrong with that man. I'm just saying. But that's one of those little idiosyncrasies that you look over. All right? Anyway, sorry. The humor portion of the show is over. But this woman was sitting on a powder keg of emotion. And I actually asked the question, and I shouldn't have, because asking a question feels like a challenge. I said, "What?" I said, "I thought you lived with somebody." I said, "I thought you..." She said, "No." I said, "Well, what about your parents and grandparents?" They're estranged. Like, she's estranged from them. She has a sister that doesn't speak to her. Like, she is alone. And I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Why do you not have a tribe?" And that's when the dam broke. Anyway, I hugged her neck. And I let her cry on my shoulder for just a little bit. We were in a store, like a retail establishment. And it was just the two of us. And we were talking. I had bought something. And I frequent this establishment quite a bit. Anyway, I hugged her neck, and she confided in me how difficult it was. And this woman felt helpless. Well, she's not helpless, but no amount of logical reasoning from myself is going to convince her she's not helpless. I already knew this, but in that very moment, I realized two things. One, I, with clarity, understood the moral of Aesop's fable about the pitcher and the vase or whatever. There's a brass pitcher and a clay vase, or a brass vase and a clay pitcher, whatever, and they are being swept down a lazy river. And the brass to the clay pitcher says, or the clay pitcher, the brass vase to the clay pitcher says, "Won't you come over here and I'll protect you? Because I am very, very strong." Okay. The clay pitcher said, because the protection from you, whenever we get to clanging in the rapids, you will be more harmful to me than the thing you're trying to protect me from. I wonder how many, and that's the one realization. I was trying to give this woman encouragement. I was trying to make her feel better for her interaction with me that day. She did end up feeling better, but because of me, she felt worse. And I was only trying to help. I was just trying to help from a place of logic and reason, whenever in this particular situation, this woman was not in a state of logic and reason. She was emotionally raw and frazzled and at her wit's end, and she's holding it together by a tiny little thread. And I just come along with my knife of logic and reason and go, boop. I retied the thread before I left. I hope it's holding. But I told her that I loved her. And I said, "Look," I said, "you need to understand," and this is, I'm walking out the door, "I love you." And I thought she was going to cry again. And I said, "I love you with the love that another person should love another person with. You're not alone. You can do this. You have a tribe if you want it." And of course I was talking to her, but I said, "Look, you ain't got to come put on Jesus or nothing." I said, "Just show up." I said, "Just come and be a part of the group." and get to know these people. You have a tribe. Hopefully she does. I'm not going to call her name. I'm not going to tell you where I met her. I want you to pray for this woman. Beautiful woman, wonderful woman, salt of the earth woman, living a highly sacrificial life, sacrificing on behalf of the well-being of her child. I don't know. I come along yesterday and made her cry. Let's get into the lesson. Barry Odell's here. He's laughing at me. Not for the story, but whenever I talked about his love of cats. Let me get in here to Matthew chapter 7. This is the conclusion of the Sermon on the Mount, by the way. I haven't taken you through it on the podcast the way I took the members here through it, but that's okay. We got a lot of... I was about to violate a passage of Scripture. I was going to say, we've got a lot of time. I don't know if we got a lot of time or not. I have read James lately. Thank you very much, Diana Harden. Not to be narcissistic, but would you pray for me too, so I don't act like an idiot again and misread a situation like that? Look, I just told her. It was so sad. I put an arm around her neck, and she leaned her head on. You know how I talk about a godly hug a lot. I put an arm around, it wasn't really her neck, it was her shoulders, and I pulled her close to me, and I leaned my head down on hers, and she just wept for a minute. And I just told her, I said, I am so sorry. I misread our conversation. I did not realize you were holding back that much emotion. I did not realize how frazzled you were. All I was trying to do was trying to make you feel better, and I've made you feel worse. I'm so sorry. You don't deserve to feel like that's what I told her. Anyway, what's up, Robert ladies? Good to see you. So maybe you can pray for me. I can get a better read on people. I've thought I call myself being a pretty good reader of people, and I read people 100% correctly 100% of the time until I don't, and then I get it terribly wrong, evidently. Okay, where are we at here? This is the end. Where do I want to start from? I've got some notes here. In fact, I've got some notes. Yeah. Let's just do from 21 to the end of the Sermon on the Mount. Not every one that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name, and in thy name cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works? Well, the answer is yes. They have. Jesus didn't tell them a lot. Sorry, this is just the reading portion of the show. Verse 23, and then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. Therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them, I will like him to a man which built his house upon the rock, and the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell. It fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. And every one that heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them not shall be likened unto a foolish man which built his house upon the sand. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. I'll read the last two verses just to end the chapter. And it came to pass when Jesus had ended these sayings, the people were astonished at his doctrine. For he taught them as one having authority, not as the scribes. As we begin the meat of this podcast, I want you to picture the scene on the mountaintop. Jesus is seated. His disciples are gathered in close. The multitudes are pressing in. Somewhere out there, there's somebody looking for the truth. But some are out there because of curiosity. Some are looking for miracles. Others are searching, as I said, for truth. What Jesus delivers is more than they expect. Jesus delivers a teaching that overturns their ideas. They had ideas about righteousness and the kingdom of heaven and the way things ought to be, and they were oppressed by the religious oligarchy of the day. they got teaching that overturned their taskmasters, their oppressors. So let's examine this conclusion of the Sermon on the Mount. It's not just a lesson for Jesus' audience in the day, it's a timeless message for us as well. Jesus, applying the Sermon on the Mount to us, he calls us to build our lives on the solid foundation of obedience to his word. So we're going to consider today whether we're truly living as he commands, or are we merely going through the motions? And as I said, if you've got a question, a comment, an observation, please put it in the comment section. I do have it on the screen today, so that's awesome. Remember to like, subscribe, and share if you want to help us grow. Before we get into the body of the text here, remember there are some ways to help us out. nearchurches@gmail.com is a PayPal. You can subscribe to our Substack for $5 a month or subscribe for free. You can also join the Christianity Now Facebook group. I've been trying to curate that group a little bit more, but let me tell you something. I need some help moderating, managing that group. What I'm trying to do with that Facebook group is a very different thing than I've ever tried to do. I'm trying to create a group in which there is 100% freedom of expression. The only thing that we're going to police the group for is violations of Facebook's, violation of the Bible's decency policy. We're not going to let people post, nasty stuff. If you're vitriolic or something like that, we give you a warning. We'll work with you, but we're not going to just, if somebody shares a video that has false doctrine, we're going to let it stand, because we want to get as large and as eclectic a group of people that we can talk to, we can interact with, and we can influence for the better. So that's, I need help with that. I cannot do that by myself. Aaron cannot do that either. Like, we actually need to assemble a team, but I don't want to come to somebody and talk them into doing it. I only want them to do it if they're like, yes, I could give some time every day to going and curating the Christianity Now Facebook group. Again, I want it to be absolutely, I want it to be absolutely free expression, with the exception of immoral images and words. Anyway, Diana Harden says, and I'm going to read this, but normally I save the comments to the end, but because we've had enough of a break here, and because I started the show with a personal story, I want to read this comment, and then I want to get into walking down these notes that I have. Mike, similar to, yeah, it is similar to appointing elders. Yeah, like I can't do this. And one man, like at a congregation, that's why one man can't be an elder. Like, let's pretend like we looked at the scriptures again and we're like, you know what? The scriptures allow for one elder. I don't think that a church could run well with one elder. It's going to have some inherent problems. The Bible teaches a multiplicity of elders, though, in a congregation. Anyway, but yes, Mike. All right, let me get back to this. I'm just going to leave this up in the lower third. Join the Christianity Now Facebook group and subscribe to our Substack. But you know the ways to support us. I've got the chat pulled back up. Now, let me get in to my notes here. All right, number one, not everyone who calls him Lord will enter the kingdom of heaven. Let's look at Matthew 7, 21 through 23. True discipleship requires doing the will of the Father. Now, when I preached this, I focused a lot on the first century context. I'm not going to do that as much today. True discipleship requires doing the will of the Father. Let me reiterate that. Not everyone that saith to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter in the kingdom of heaven, but everyone that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Matthew 7, 21. I want you to notice Jesus emphasizes here the importance of the doing. It's not enough just to recognize him. That's why I've never understood the sinner's prayer. We can have a conversation about the theological validity of on the surface, seemingly non-committal acceptance of Jesus into your heart. And I loaded that because I'm biased against it. I hope that don't make you think less of me. But we can talk about the theological validity of that. But you got to get past this one. So all I got to do is say, Jesus, I accept you into my heart and make you Lord of my life. And if I die right then, I'll be saved. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord. In other words, if you just call out to Jesus, it don't work. If you're in the pits of gloom and despair, oh, Lord, help me. God might send you somebody to help you out in a physical situation, but that ain't going to save your soul. The help you receive from God in that situation might just be a merciful hand extended to help you along to where you have some time to obey the gospel. Many will say unto me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? And in thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works. That's works that are full of wonder. This is miracles, folks. Do you think they were lying? Do you think they didn't do these things? They did. But it wasn't going to get them to make heaven because they weren't obedient. Oh, they might have obeyed the gospel. They might have obeyed that clarion call that Jesus was putting forth while he was on earth. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. They may have done that, but they must have done it for their own selfish reasons. They didn't do it out of a love of God, or maybe they did it in the beginning out of a love of God, but they're just going through the motions. This is the equivalent of us coming to church every time the doors open, giving as we've been prospered, giving to the needy from time to time, volunteering for a lock-in, for a youth night, doing these things, but yet you're reckoning them as a trade-off for your salvation. You're just going through the motions. You're like those children of Israel in the long ago, written about by Isaiah. In fact, I got my full-size Bible here this morning. So we're going to go all the way back to Isaiah chapter 1, and I'll read. I guess I should have just done this on my e-sword. I just love reading from a physical copy of the Bible. All right. Verse 10 is what I'm going to start reading from in the book of Isaiah. Verse 10, chapter 1. Hear the word of the Lord, ye rulers of Sodom. Give ear unto the law of our God, ye people of Gomorrah. To what purpose is the multitude of your sacrifices unto me, saith the Lord? I am full of the burnt offerings of rams, and of the fat of fed beasts, and I delight not in the blood of bullocks or of lambs, or of he-goats. When you come to appear before me, who hath required this at your hand to tread my courts? Bring no more vain oblations. Incense is an abomination unto me. The new moons, the Sabbaths, the calling of assemblies, I cannot away with. It is iniquity, even the solemn meeting. Your new moons and your appointed feast my soul hateth. They are a trouble to me. I am weary to bear them. And when you spread forth your hands, I will hide my eyes from you. Yea, when you make many prayers, I will not hear you. Your hands are full of blood. And I guess we can go to Micah chapter 6. Because quite frankly, that's a good one too. Oops. Uh-oh. I missed. Oh, there it is. I thought Micah was before Jonah. All right, Micah chapter 6. Let's read this. See if we can get a pattern here. I'm going to start reading in verse 3. O my people, what have I done unto thee, and wherein have I wearied thee? Testify against me. That's God laying down the gauntlet to his people. For I brought thee up out of the land of Egypt, and redeemed thee out of the house of servants, and I set before thee Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. O my people, remember now that O my people, remember now what Balak, king of Moab, consulted and what Balaam the son of Beor answered him from Shittim unto Gilgal, that ye may know the righteousness of the Lord. So you need to remember this. Remember what happened. You people went away. Verse 6, wherewith shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before the high God? So this is Micah being inspired of God, speaking as if he were the representative of the children of Israel categorically. So the children of Israel are trying to say within themselves is what's going on. Wherewith shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before the high God? So they're saying, how can I be acceptable? What can I do to make myself acceptable enough to come before God? I know what I can do. Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves of a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams? Or with 10,000 rivers of oil? Like all of this material stuff that they possess. You think God's pleased with that if you don't come from a contrite and desirous heart wanting to serve and obey him out of love and respect and maybe a healthy dose of fear? If you just come going through the motions, you might draw the conclusion. If you come thinking that your works justify you, then the greatest motion, the greatest work, the greatest sacrifice would be the best, hierarchical, on the hierarchy of effective sacrifices. If the efficacy comes from the sacrificer, then the penultimate sacrifice that a man can make is sacrificing a child. The ultimate was sacrificing his own life. So if you think that it's your works, well, here it is. This is where you're going to come to. Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sins of my people? Or the sins of my soul? Sorry. And then, of course, Micah goes on, he hath showed thee, O man, what doth the Lord require of thee, but to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God. My brethren, just because you say, Lord, Lord, look at everything I've done. I've gone to church. Listen, Lord. There was a snowstorm in Alabama on Wednesday night. I still went to Bible study. I never knew you. Depart from me. You're a worker of iniquity. Outward deeds do not matter without a proper involvement of the heart. You see, the Jews relied on outward righteousness rather. Historically, the Jews placed their confidence in the lineage of the house of David, the lineage of Abraham, and adherence to the law. They believed that being descendants of Abraham in the kingdom of David guaranteed their place in God's kingdom. But Jesus so easily dismantles this notion, calling for inward obedience. I'm going to say something that's going to be hard for many of my listeners to take. Just because you're a member of the Church of Christ don't mean you're going to make heaven. A lot of members of the Church of Christ ain't going to do it, ain't going to make it. It's because of what we're talking about today. Lord, Lord, I don't understand. I heard the gospel. I believed the gospel. I repented, I confessed, and I was baptized. I lived faithfully. Depart from me, I never knew you. Now, you got another fella come up. He's got the same testimony. Lord, Lord. But he don't say it. He says, Lord, Lord, I love you. I've tried my best. I just want to spend an eternity with you. I know I've fallen short. That dude goes in. What's the difference? It's the involvement of the heart. It's the attitude. We ain't got enough time. We're already 30 minutes in. I can't go to Romans 4. But go to Romans 4 and look what Paul says about Abraham and the difference between reckoning your works is what saves you versus reckoning God's grace is what saves you. Your faith. The action you take based on what you believe. Anyway, back to... The Jews expected the Messiah to overthrow Roman rule. What's going to happen? Jesus directs them towards a spiritual kingdom. Obedience, not political freedom. Freedom is the key. Freedom. Obedience, not political freedom, is the key to entering the kingdom of heaven. I don't know if I come up with this. I don't even know it's particularly brilliant. It makes so much sense to me, and it's rather powerful in my head. Do you remember whenever David slew Goliath and Solomon was jealous? Remember when they came in, the city was chanting, Saul has claimed his 1,000 or his thousands, but David has claimed or slain his tens of thousands. I believe that what most Jewish people were looking forward to was the triumphal entry into Jerusalem, and instead of it being like it was, they're saying they're going, well, actually, it wouldn't be the triumphal entry to Jerusalem, would it? After Jesus takes the kingdom and goes and conquers, when he comes back, that would be a triumphal entry. Don't confuse that with the triumphal entry account in the Bible. So upon a triumphal entry of Jerusalem, the Jews would want to cry, David has slain his thousands, Saul his 10,000s. Messiah has slain his hundreds of thousands. They wanted to exalt the Messiah. They placed their confidence in a political kingdom. They thought obedience to a king, Jesus, on earth, being freed politically from the Romans was the key to entering heaven. They had it wrong. Now, how does this apply to us? I think I've already said it throughout the podcast. Are we relying on religious activity or our association with the church to save us? Jesus' word challenges us to examine that. Examine our hearts. Are we doing the will of the Father, or are we simply going through the motion? Let's talk about the wise and foolish builders. Obedience to Jesus' word is the foundation for a secure life. Okay? The people who said, Lord, Lord, and heard, depart from me, I never knew you, you don't want to be like them. Therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine. And doeth them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house upon the rock. The wise builder not only hears, but acts on Jesus' teaching. Doesn't matter how much you hear, doesn't matter how much you believe, it matters how much you do. You can hear all of it, you can believe all of it, but if you don't do any of it, you're not going to make heaven. And that doesn't mean your obedience saves you. So, The rain descended. The floods came. The wind blew and beat upon that house. It fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. Matthew 7:25. The house stands because it is built upon Christ. It is within the boundaries of Christ. When you stay within the boundaries, that is obedience. Now, the foolish builder, well, everyone that heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them not shall be likened unto a foolish man, which built his house upon the sand. The rains descended, the floods came, the winds blew and beat upon the house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. The foolish man hears. The foolish man might even believe, but he does not obey. His house collapses. The audience understood the risk of a sandy foundation. In that area, the builders knew that seasonal floods could destroy homes built on unstable ground. This imagery would have been clear to the listeners. If you'll notice, well, I'm using a different thumbnail on YouTube, but I use this for an article on Substack. And if you look at the thumbnail on Substack, ChatGPT did a really good image for me. I was like, look, I want it like this. I described it. And within a few tries, it spit out that image. And it's an image of a huge rock, and the rock has sand all around it, and there's a lone house built upon the rock. I love the image because it's multifaceted. There's sand all around it. There's only one place that's safe. There's only one place that you can build. All of this open space. There's only one place you can build and get away with it. It's a little hard to get to. It's not convenient. If you can't preach this, I don't know, man. What can you preach? Anyhow, if you build your house upon the rock, you're going to be like that picture. You're going to be isolated from the rest of the world. You're going to be ostracized. That's why it's so important to have a tribe. That's why it's so important to have a group of people around you. Even if you don't like them very much. No man is an island. The Jewish nation itself had an unstable foundation, folks. By rejecting Jesus and clinging to the traditions of men, the Jewish leaders were building on sand. They had already built on sand because the rabbinical system came about that produced all of these different sects of Judaism. Was built on this rabbinical system that was in turn built on the traditions that were supposedly handed down from mouth to ear from Sinai that were not from God. The destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70 vividly demonstrated the consequences of rejecting Jesus, the consequences of rejecting the prophets, the consequences of rejecting Moses. Quite frankly, it just shows the consequences of rejecting God. Are we building on the rock or on the sand? We have to ascertain that one thing if we want to spend an eternity with God in heaven. Are we grounding our lives in obedience to Jesus? Or are we relying on these cultural norms, personal opinions, or shallow faith? Are we building upon the rock of Jesus, or are we relying on cultural norms? Well, COVID hit. Now everybody worships at home. I guess I can too. What about personal opinions? Well, I don't think so-and-so should X, Y, Z. All right. So you're not going to be part of that church? Yeah, ain't nothing but a bunch of hypocrites. The only place hypocrites can... There ain't no hypocrites in Walmart unless they're Christians. The only people that can be hypocrites, technically, are Christians. It's people live to an ideal. People who live for an ideal. If they fall short of it, they're not Christian. They're not hypocrites. They're humans. So in order to be a hypocrite, you have to take on the persona of one thing while being another. Huh. That's funny. Anyway, I'm going to stop there. personal opinion, shallow faith, cultural norms, folks, only those who build on the rock of Christ are going to withstand the storms of life and judgment. So let's talk about the end of the Jewish age and the beginning of the Christian covenant. So Jesus ushers in a new era of obedience and transformation. Jesus says, "Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I'm not come to destroy, but to fulfill." His mission was not to abolish the old covenant, but to fulfill its purpose, leading to the new covenant. You don't want to be built on the sand of the old covenant. Read the New Testament. It's not very good. It doesn't go very well for people who try to leave Christ and go back under the old covenant. There remains there no more sacrifice of sin for you. There's only a certain fearful waiting for the judgment of the Lord. It's almost like you can read that in a book. You see, the destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem in AD 70 symbolized the end of the Jewish age. No longer would worship center on the temple and animal sacrifices. The new covenant emphasizes inward transformation and, quite frankly, wholehearted obedience to Christ. Just as the Jewish nation faced rejection, just as the Jewish nation faced judgment for rejecting Christ, we need to look at ourselves. Are we clinging to these traditions or self-righteousness? The principles of the new covenant demand more. They demand more rather than outward conformity. They require a true submission to Jesus. Practical lessons for modern believers now, and then the podcast to be yours. True faith requires hearing and doing, folks. Therefore, all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, even so do to them, for this is the law and the prophets. What Jesus is saying here, even if you're not very smart, even if you don't know the law and the prophets very well, even if you don't know the Bible very well at all, if you get this right, if you're right with the covenant, in other words, if you are in a covenant relationship with God through Jesus, so if you're in Christ, you will never find yourself outside of Christ if you practice adequately Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. If you understand this, everything else is just details. If you understand this, everything else is just quote-unquote theology. All things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. Why? Because this is a synopsis of the law and the prophets. Hearing the word is not enough, folks. We must live it out. Listen to the Beatitudes. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness. Why? For they shall be filled. But if you don't hunger and thirst after it, in other words, you're not actively seeking it, you're not going to get it. Are you content with mediocrity? Or are you hungering for more? Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake. Let me do that again. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 5:10. Storms are going to come, folks. But a life built on the rock of Christ stands firm. Jesus' words in Matthew 7:21 through 27, they are not suggestions. They are a call to action. The socio-political and religious context of the day highlights the urgency of Jesus' message. Now today we've still got to examine our foundations. Are we building upon the rock of Christ and His Word? Or are we building on the unstable sands of self-reliance? I hope you're building on the former, not the latter. The storms are going to come. If you don't believe me, just open up this book and ask Peter. maybe around chapter 4 of the first letter. Only those who build their lives on obedience to Jesus will stand. Please, lay siege to the throne of heaven on behalf of your fellow Christians and pray to God for the strength to be among those who are wise, who build upon the rock. Let us never be considered one of the foolish people who build upon a sand. That's right. You can't let God's word go in one ear and out t'other. We got to hear it and do something about it. And it requires an active faith with the right attitude. And have mercy on a sinner like me. And I'm going to be the quote-unquote, well, actually guy, just because I always take an opportunity to try to uplift the brethren. And I know that you don't need uplifting because I know what you mean by this. As a Christian, we are only sinners in so much as we mess up and we do sin from time to time. Theologically speaking, we cannot think of ourselves as sinners, because if we think of ourselves as sinners, we undermine the power of the blood of Christ. I always tell this to people when I baptize them into Christ, especially younger, like 14, 15, 16-year-old, I call them kids. I hate to say they're kids. I fully believe with one of the listeners that listens quite often, we infantilize so much. I think it, anyway, different podcast for another time. I tell these young people when I baptize them into Christ, I look at them, and the old people too for that matter, but mostly I've done this at camp. You never in your life ever have to be referred to as a sinner again. From here on out, you will be a redeemed or a saved person. Categorically, you are not in the category of sinners. You have been delivered out of the power of that category, out of the power of that darkness, and into the kingdom of God's dear Son. If you slip, trip, and fall, stand up and keep walking forward, and you will never leave the blood, and you will never be labeled a sinner. It's so awesome. All right. Hopefully you forgive me for that, Mike Osnes. I try not to make a habit of, well, actually anybody. She is not a Christian. Absolutely. Diana Harden says, I think that lady, this is from the story I told the first part of the podcast. I think that lady needed to release those tears and all she was holding back. In the end, I think you helped her, and I'm praying this encounter will lead to better things. And if she's not a Christian, I pray it leads her to Christ. I would that everybody in the whole world for a moment just spend some time and pray that. Lay siege to the throne of heaven. I love that phrase. I heard Keith Moser say it one time, and I steal stuff I like. If y'all ever hear me say anything that y'all think is particularly brilliant and clever, there's like a 99% chance that didn't originate with me. Now, I will say this. If you ever hear me say anything that's particularly brilliant but not clever, probably came from me. If you hear me say anything that's clever but not particularly brilliant, probably came from me. I have a hard time meeting the two. I remember being little and Mom getting on to me about something. She would say, "Do you hear me?" I don't know if she said it in that voice, but I've heard that phrase with that tone of voice. Do you hear me? I don't know if your mama talked like that or not. Anyway, and I would say, I hear you. And then she would say, but are you listening? If you can't preach that, you ought not be a preacher. That's good stuff. Are we listening to God? Look, sucker even gave us a sermon title. Robert Lady, not for nothing, but this would make a really good article that you could publish in your bulletin, and I could steal and I could publish it on Substack. I'm just saying, not for nothing. Folks, I've enjoyed today's live stream. If y'all didn't enjoy it one lick, I enjoyed it enough for all of us. I so appreciate every one of you. I appreciate you allowing me to get on here. I hope 2025 is going to be good for us. Like I said, we're going to be focusing on the Bible. That's it. Well, I mean, that's not it. Obviously, we're going to talk about politics and stuff a little bit, but that's not going to be the focus of the show. And I got some feedback from Gigi in Arkansas. I think I'm going to put some quote-unquote flair up in the background. Maybe some stars. I could do it with, I could just get some fabric and put some fabric up, but I could go to the fabric store and get some like really cool fabric with stars and stripes. And Gigi said I needed to America it all up, but I'm like, I don't know. I think the glow in the dark stars would be cool, but Gigi said red and white stars. She didn't say blue, so I don't know. Anyway, I just feel like there's something missing here, like in this area. I don't know. I like it. I got to get the lighting fixed. So I can mess with. In fact, I think while I'm on the. No, that's the camera hub. Oh, I can do backgrounds from the. Wait a second. Oh, it's not working. Evidently, I can't change it while it's live. Oh, well. I can on Restream. And I know this is compelling live streaming. But I can do that. I can blur the background, but I don't like the way that looks. It's supposed to be like a field of depth, or depth of field of depth. But I don't like the way that looks. I don't know what that is. Oh, bricks. But you see how it's all, I'd actually have to do a green screen. But that's why you need green screens. I don't know if a black screen would do it. A black one won't. All right, I've got to quit playing. Good grief, I can upload stuff. Oh, this ain't good. Let me show y'all this. Can you upload stuff to be the background? Why, you can. Look at that. All right, we're going to get out of this. No background. Why did y'all let me go off on this tangent? Dana Hard, outstanding job, Tony. Thank you very much. Well, I appreciate you. Now, y'all have heard me go over all the stuff. Like, subscribe, share, support, all that good stuff. It's in the show notes. I don't know what I'm going to do with Podbean after this year. If Podbean doesn't grow, I don't know if it's stagnant. I don't know if I've messed with different kinds of content on the Cogitations channel so much that it's not growing. But I'm contemplating killing the Podbean Cogitations channel. It's just not doing enough. I think I could do it. I think I could have a better presence for podcasting, just making a new Substack channel, a new Substack podcast channel. I can take the code and I can move it over to Substack, and it will transport all of my stuff. It will still be on iTunes. It'll still be on Apple Podcast. I don't know. We'll see. But if you listen, this is a challenge. If you listen to the podcast on Podbean and you want me to continue putting it up on Podbean, I need you to start actively engaging on Podbean, because, and I'm just saying, you've got to, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, or Podbean, those are the four. If you engage on any of them, it makes the podcast channel on Podbean grow. That's how that works. You have to like, you have to subscribe, make sure you're following. Every once in a while, just take a random episode you've heard and share it and invite people to listen to it. The awesome thing you can do, I'm talking about, it's like ninjistically awesome. Did you catch that word? Ninjistically? Go look up these Christian groups on Facebook and share the links to the podcast on the Christian groups. And just say, hey, y'all listen to this guy. If you find something you hear on my podcast that you disagree with and you can't stand, share it to the groups and say, hey, this guy at 37 minutes, 27 seconds said X, Y, or said something I disagree with terribly. Y'all go check it out. I don't know. See what happens. But that would help us get, Diana Hart says, I enjoy going back to your archived podcast on Podbean. Yes. And the only thing about that is it cost, it cost like $108 per year. And that's US. Here you go. 108 USD to Canada. Yeah, it costs $155 a month. And that's if I pay for it up front. I do pay for it up front, but it would be like, it'd be like time and a half. Yeah, it'd be like $232 Canadian if I didn't pay for it up front. Anyway, good morning, Connie Barton. It's been a minute since I've seen you. In 2 days, it will be a year and 10 days since I have seen you in the chat. Folks, I just want to let you know that about the Podbean channel. I'm going to get off here. I don't know how to end these things. Like, subscribe, share, do all the stuff. This has been Tony Brewer with Cogitations. Do what's best for you. Appreciate you, Diana Harden. I do. And look, there's no tone with text on comments and stuff. Diana, I'm just gonna say this. I'm not reading anything in your tone, but if I'm thinking about how what I say comes across to other people, I am cognizant of the fact now that the way I presented this, it seems like I'm complaining. I'm not. I enjoy the Podbean. You know, you dance with the one that brought you. I feel like Podbean's brought me. While I was doing just a regular spoken audio podcast, I was getting about $3,000 and something downloads a month. Now I'm getting like 1,000 downloads a month. I don't know I do know what's going on. We've changed the format of the content one too many times. And so I think that Podbean's algorithm don't know what to do with us. So we got to be very consistent. We got to hack the algorithm. Have you started your open discussion group? Yes. Yes. It's, in fact, you might be, I thought you was in it. I sent out invitations not too long ago. Let's see. Let's see. Hold on, I got to find the group. Yeah, right there it is. All right, boom. Oh, come on, Tony. Get with the program. 353 members it has now, and it's gained about 100 members in the last week and a half or so. But I wonder, are you in there? I thought you was in there. Oh, of course, it picks now to slow down. But anyway, I'll check and see if you're in the group. If not, it's an open group. It's searchable. I don't even think that you have to get permission to join. And right now, there's no moderation whatsoever. So if you think that you would like to get in and just keep an eye on things, so the level of involvement that I'm looking for is as little as just keeping an eye on things and getting the really egregious stuff as it comes up. From that, all the way up to you're actually producing content and putting it and sharing it in the group. Okay? So let's just, if you think you might be interested in any level or any point along that spectrum, let me know. And that's all I've got here, folks. God bless every one of you. This has been Tony Brewer with Cogitations. Y'all are amazing. I don't deserve the audience that I have, and I appreciate you. Pray for that woman. Pray for me. God bless you, and we'll catch you. I thought about that. Hold on. Let me. A comment come in. Hopefully you're still with me. The problem with the whiteboard is because the reason. Now, I may set up some videos. I have done whiteboards in the past. But the reason I can't do it here is because that would defeat the purpose of having this foam. This foam is setting in front of what's called sonopan. This is very acoustically treated. I do have an opening here that I've got to do something with, but this is much better than it was. But if I put a whiteboard up here, so if I do a 2 foot by 4 foot whiteboard, I might as well take down a whole section of this panel. It's just wasted. So, because the sound would pop off of that. So as I'm speaking, sound, even though I'm projecting that way, it will hit this wall behind me. And then if I had a whiteboard there, it would reflect, and my microphone would catch it. But that's why that's a I can't think of the word for using too many words. Is it loquacious? Yep. That is a very loquacious explanation rather. And circuitous. And circuitous. I can't read today. All right, that last part where I really messed up pronunciations, y'all forget about that. Like, subscribe, and share. Go to the Christianity Now Facebook group, Substack, all that good stuff. Look at the show notes. Help us beat the algorithm.